Hey, it's Brock here with Uncommon Aquatics, and today we're going to do kind of a species profile on one of my favorite species. Now, it's not a fish, but it also doesn't seem like an amphibian. I'm not sure what the category you would put this aquatic pet in, but what I do know is that they are so much fun to keep. They have a lot of personality, and really, I can just never get tired of watching them. So what I'm talking about today is an African clawed frog. And I've got a nice size one in here, and I've got some video of an even larger albino version. Now, I love these African clawed frogs, but you have to be really careful about what you house them with. For some fish, like my 12-inch arowana, or even these bichers, if they got large enough, they could consider that frog food. But also, that frog will eat a pretty good sized fish. So you really have to mix it just right so that he's not dinner and he doesn't consider his tank mates to be dinner. So what I want to do right now is cut up some shrimp. I've got frozen shrimp in the freezer out here. I want to cut up some shrimp and feed this tank and let you guys just watch the way he eats and the way he interacts with the other fish. And then I'll do a little bit of a species profile and just read through all of the things you need to know before getting one of these fish. I normally don't do a lot of species profiles on this channel, but I was specifically asked to profile this frog, so here we go. So here you see me dumping a whole bunch of cut up shrimp into the aquarium. And really this is a case of overfeeding, because this tank has already got its normal feeding just a couple hours ago. So this stuff sits on the bottom for a little while, which gives the bichers, the ropefish, and the frog time to find the food, because they're not quite as quick to find food, as they don't rely so much on their eyesight as their sense of smell to search. So this is called a frog. So it is definitively an amphibian just from that definition. But when I think of an amphibian, I think of an animal that can live in the water or on land. And yes, this frog could live on land for a short period of time, but not really. This is a fully aquatic frog that never needs to leave the water. Now, like several of my fish, especially the ones I was just mentioning, he does come up to the top and pull air from the surface. So I guess that is what makes him an amphibian. If you see one of these frogs as a baby, you might be able to mistake it for an African dwarf frog, which is very common in the hobby and is a small, peaceful frog that doesn't get very big and would be very unlikely to eat even small fish. Whereas this is a true predator. It's an ambush predator. I really enjoy watching the way he swims around. He's always got his hands out in front of him and feels like a little scuba diver or something to me. And he'll move to a new location and then he'll pause just like this, waiting for food to swim in front of him. And when it does, he jumps forward and pounces on it. And he's got a huge mouth that's, able to swallow something almost as big as he is. And when he gets a piece of food in his mouth, he uses his claws on his back feet to rip and tear at that food and break it up into pieces he can swallow. It's really remarkable to watch him eat bigger chunks. So here we are back at feeding time, and if you watch closely, you'll be able to see him eat some. He's on the lower right side, towards the center basically, and just paused in that stance that he always takes. And you're about to see him go up for air, I believe. Now, I already mentioned that these get a lot bigger. I've seen these guys that were 8 inches long, like a giant bullfrog. And they get really chubby too. And at that size, they're really going to be able to swallow a pretty good sized fish. And I've seen that firsthand too. And because of this, the size and the appetite, a lot of people will say that these frogs should not be kept with fish or any other animal
that they should be in a tank by themselves. And that's not been my experience. This is about 10 or more frogs of this species that I've had during my 20 years of aquarium keeping. And I have always kept them with other fish, and I've had very few problems. You need fish that get at least 6 inches long, and they will not be food for the frog. And if he can't eat them, he won't bother them. Now, you wouldn't put this frog in with something like a red-tailed catfish that could swallow him right up. But how many of us are actually keeping those fish? And if you have an aquarium with a red-tailed catfish, you're probably not considering an African frog as a tank mate anyway. But in my experience, these guys are tough. I would have been concerned that some of the fish in this aquarium would pester him and pick at him or bite his feet or damage him. And I've just never had that be the case. It seems like they've got really tough skin and they just aren't bothered by the fish. So once you get past tank mates, this is a very easy species to keep. You do need a decent sized tank. I would say at least a 20-gallon for one frog by himself. But if you're keeping them with anything else, you're going to need a lot bigger tank. But they are not particular at all about water quality, and I don't think they are highly susceptible to common aquarium illnesses that might befall your fish. I can't remember once where I had lost one of these frogs to illness or unexplained death like you sometimes have with fish. So I would actually call it kind of a beginner's level fish, which isn't a fish, but I would also say they're kind of a dirty fish or a dirty aquatic pet, kind of like a goldfish, that they might foul your water more than the average fish you could keep. Now, in terms of what to feed these guys, they want to eat things that are alive. They don't want to eat any kind of dry, prepared, or pellet food. And I would have told you previously that they would only eat live food. And I've always fed them earthworms, and sometimes in the past I even fed live fish. But they're great with any kind of worm and crickets, and specifically the frog that you're seeing right now is trained to pellets. He will eat the pellets that I feed my other fish. This should kind of go without saying and be true of all aquarium fish species. But these aquatic frogs, you might think you could release into nature, and it's definitely not true. These are considered an invasive species and dangerous to the local habitat.
Alright, so I appreciate you taking time to watch this. So hopefully you learned something about these frogs, and if you have a tank that can house one, I think you would really enjoy having one. So I really appreciate you taking time to watch this video. I'll put links on the screen to a couple more of our videos, and I'll see you next time.